Thank you for joining us on FemTalk 89 FM. I'm Vasemaca Naivalulevu, and here with me today are Ashna Lata of the Ramanra Multiracial Club from Navua and Luisa of the Fiji Disabled People's Federation. And we'll be discussing human security and protection before, during, and after a humanitarian emergency, and in our case, Tropical Cyclone Winston. Throughout the consultation, a common issue that we've been discussing has been food security. As most of us know, that food security refers to the availability of food and one's access to it, that there is enough food for an active and healthy life, that dietary needs for productive life is met, and also that people have both physical and economic access to basic food. Now, Ashna, what change do you want to see to ensure that food security priority is met?
During this discussion, I recommend Ministry of Agriculture to conduct consultations and consistent communication with rural women on the needs that women would like to address and provide accurate solutions on food security. Thank you.
And how can this be done, Ashna?
I think we should be informed by relevant authority, and we should include with the women in the consultations, example, Ministry of Agriculture, and in the community.
Thank you. Why do you think that ensuring food security needs to be done?
I think this needs to be done because women can also come up with effective ideas on food security, because women normally do the cooking and marketing, so they are the ones who know best about food needs.
Thank you, Ashna. Now coming to you, Luisa.
Yes.
What changes do you want to see to ensure that food security is met, especially from disability sector? Yes.
Thank you. From the disability sector, I believe that a disability contingency plan on preparedness for any natural disaster has to be in place, as well as we know that persons with disability need to be accessing affordable nutritional food that is beneficial to one's health, as persons with disability also undergo health complications. Health complications when consuming processed foods too much, or when consuming food that is not necessarily required for them to consume, or not supposed to be in their diet.
Luisa, how can this be done?
This can be done for government and other relevant organizations to collaborate and consistently communicate with disabled people's organizations in the Central Division that can identify their members in those affected areas by the cyclone, and be the ones to actively engage within the disaster committees during the consultations, and also for government to have a disaggregated data on disability as well.
Why does ensuring food security need to be done?
This is to ensure that not only some persons with disability from one area are heavily involved or only included in disaster committees or in consultations, and to recognize that all persons with disability that persons with disability not only exist in the urban areas, but they do exist in other areas as well. And when we say other areas, I am meaning the affected areas by Cyclone Winston.
Thank you so much. You're listening to FemTalk 89 FM, and I'm Naivalulevu, speaking to Ashna Lata of Ramanra Multiracial Club from Navua and Luisa of the Fiji Disabled People's Federation. Now let's talk about the situation before and after Winston. For you, Ashna, being from Navua, what was the situation like before Winston and immediately after Winston?
I think before instant food was affordable, there was not a lot of sickness and the prices of the food was low, and we can buy what amount of food we want. And after the instant food was expensive, vegetable shortage, more sickness because of unhealthy diet. And for example, we can buy only 2 kg sugar, not 1%, not more extra than that.
And for you, Luisa?
For persons with disabilities, unemployment is a big issue before Winston, as well as accessing services and support mechanisms. And lastly, attitudinal barriers by service providers.
Vinaka, now, 5 months after Winston, what has the situation been like in Navua?
In Navua, the situation was, life was still very hard because vegetables shortage, prices of the food items were high. Example, I live with my husband and my mother-in-law, and he is the only earner in my house, so all the food items are expensive, and he has to pay the electricity bills, water bills, and other expenses.
For a person with disability, what has it been like 5 months after Winston?
5 months after Winston, unemployment is still a reality for all persons with disability, as well as accessing services has tremendously become a big problem for all persons with disability as well. And when we say unemployment, how it links with the food security, unemployment I can say is that it's unaffordable for any person with disability to buy or be able to purchase nutritional food items that will benefit a person with disability. And when we talk about unemployment for a person with disability, we also highlight the issue of the daily necessity a person with disability requires, and this means medical supplies. An example would be for someone that uses stipends or other kind of sort of medical supply that a person with disability would require to live on a daily basis, and this comes with costs. And when you have food items shooting rocket high, it's definitely a big issue for a person with disability, especially after Winston. Yes.
Thank you, Luisa. From our discussions, we've also talked about what women want to see and why. For you, Ashna, what are women doing in your area to address food security?
Women in my area, they are started doing their backyard farming so that they can get fresh and healthy vegetables from the garden, and to save money rather than buying expensive vegetables, example cabbage, chili, eggplant, and cassava. And we can also preserve some food items, example chilies.
Thank you. For you, Luisa, how are women leading the responses in, for example, in your community, being from the community with people with disabilities, addressing this issue of food security?
Thank you. Women with disabilities were actually leading teams that went down on the ground and engaged actively with disaster committees. And from this, assistance were being received by the disability movement, as well as distributions. Assistance received roughly, on top of my head, I can say 50% of assistance being received by the disability movement to go to those who were affected during the cyclone.
Thank you. And still with you, Luisa, what are the barriers to women in decision making? Were they being consulted so their solutions were taken into account?
Not all women with disabilities or persons with disabilities were being consulted on this note, as I've mentioned before that only those that were in the urban areas were being contacted and consulted, as there were, for persons with disability, we have barriers like physical barrier, And when I say physical barrier, I mean how a person with disability or someone on a wheelchair gets to enter a particular building where there is steps. A person with disability cannot enter that particular building to participate in those kind of discussions. And for the transportation, where you have to get a person with disability who is actually in the affected area and get them transported to one of these places where you have these meetings, these disaster meetings or these disaster consultations being made. Transportation is a big thing that persons with disability have to face as well when accessing transportation or transporting them from one point to another. And going down to just because of the geographical locations and where they are being located, it's not easy for a person with disability to travel. It is also not an easy thing when a person with disability gets to the venue of a meeting and cannot participate in that meeting because of the environmental factors that surround those things.
Thank you, Luisa. And for you, Ashna, what are the barriers to women in decision making in your area, in Navua?
No women are involved in the decision making. Only the men are involved in the decision making in my area. More women should be involved in, and women will do whatever men will say. We listen to men. We need to change that.
Thank you. And still with you, Ashna. How can we support women and women's initiative to make the change that we want to see?
I think we should encourage more women in decision making, promote and appoint a woman in decision making, and also recognize women for their contribution to the community.
Thank you. Now for you, Luisa, how can we support women with disability who want to take up leadership roles? And how do we support women as a whole on their initiatives to make the change that we want to see?
Thank you. Disability movement has existing programs with them that offers some assistance to women with disabilities as well as persons with disabilities at large. But this cannot only be done by the disabled people's organization within the disability movement. So we're calling forth on the government, CSOs, service providers, and other relevant organizations to consistently work with persons with disability, disabled people's organizations in actively engaging and including persons with disabilities in all decision-making levels that would offer appropriate needs and support for persons with disability in regards to the disability issues that are being raised.
So thank you very much, Ashna Lata from the Raman Rao Multiracial Club from Navua, and Luisa Miracle of the Fiji Disabled People's Federation for talking to us on Fem Talk 89 FM.